Hello, everyone. Welcome to EndoEmpower episode 6. We are joined today with a special guest. I'll let her introduce herself in a minute, but I'm board president and patient advocate for Endo Forward Foundation, Liz. And with me, I have.
I'm Yadi, our creative director at Endo Forward Foundation, and this is
Sophia, and I am today's guest. So super happy to be here. A little bit about myself. I am 8 weeks out from my first laparoscopy excision surgery. And it has been a long time coming. I'm 34 right now, but have had issues ever since I was a child. Like my first diagnosis was IBS as a 7-year-old. That was then followed by 17 years of doctor's appointments with zero diagnoses other than go do some yoga for your anxiety and your gut issues. And in college, I got to the point where I just gave up trying to figure out what my health issues were. I had horrible cycles from my very first time. And it wasn't until 2 years ago that I was going to PT, pelvic floor therapy. And my PT was saying, like, you can get a surgery. I think you have endo. And I was like, oh yeah, I've been told that my whole life, but like, there's nothing, it's just a bad period. And she was like, actually, no, there's a lot that can be done starting with surgery. And so I finally got that, and still kind of in the recovery, going through recovery, but I am super happy to be here. And this group has been pivotal in encouraging me to get the surgery and prepping me. And the one of the biggest things that I got from Endo Forward was the gift basket that Liz, sorry, that's my dog in the background. But Liz sent a comfort box. I don't know, what do y'all call them?
Care basket.
your basket.
Care basket. Yeah. And that honestly changed so much for me, realizing that there is a group of women out here who care enough to send me a care basket. Like, they've never met me. So I'm really happy to be here today to talk about, another big part of my past was I got my undergrad in childhood education and development, but
I still remember the email you
hold on, let
sent
me-
after you got your care basket, and I lost it. And so I just keep like thinking back to that whenever you're talking about the care basket and like, we do so much, but we don't really get to see all the time, like the repercussions that it has on y'all. And yeah, your email was
it
For
was
those
huge
who are
for
just
me.
listening, Liz is crying.
Yeah, it was huge for me. I didn't think gifts was like my love language. Like, oh, who cares about gifts? But like when I got that basket, I like cried. Um, and there was a little crochet turtle. I was a big stuffed animal person when I was a kid, and I haven't had one in years. I mean, decades.
PY Beanie
But
Babies.
yeah, yeah. But y'all, I held that turtle every time my pain got so severe after surgery. My husband literally knew, like, give her the turtle. Like, we named it Mateo. I don't know where that came from, but I still have him by my bedside. And when the pain gets bad, I like grab it, and it's kind of like a sensory thing for me. I can like kind of feel it, and I don't know, it helps me cope. And so that has just been a really sweet gift. But like I was saying before my lovely dog interrupted, I have a background in education, and then I was in the middle of getting my master's in counseling, and that's something that I hope we're gonna kind of talk through today. I had done all of the classes for the program, and I ended up having to drop out twice in the last, like, I had 4 weeks left before graduation both times, but my health, I just couldn't physically do it anymore because of nerve pain and just, so many different symptoms that kept me from being able to really care for clients the way that they need. So I have all the classwork done. I have all the knowledge, which I love and I'm so grateful for. But I'm not going to get that degree. And that's okay. So moving forward from that, but I am super passionate about understanding the brain-body connection and just also educating women on the fact that like there's really good counseling and there's really bad counseling and how to know like not to waste your time and like how to figure out a good counseling fit for you. So anyway, that's kind of my long story background.
You know, we've been talking a lot within the past week on like IG stories, and there'll be a post coming up and stuff. But just like with any healthcare professional, just because somebody is a good fit for somebody else, or somebody has good Google reviews or is well known within the community, doesn't mean that they're the best fit for you.
Yeah.
And that's something really important to point out to people, that somebody may be going to the exact same counselor. There might be 20 community members, but that fit isn't going to be best for you. And it shouldn't turn you off of like, there's something wrong with me, or I'm never going to find the right fit, I'm too picky, or stuff like that. Like, there is always a counselor out there for you. It just takes you kind of going through that journey of finding the perfect fit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us. When Yadi and I sat down and talked with you, what was it, like 2 weeks ago now? I walked away just feeling, I don't know. Creating this community, I've always felt less alone, but then like talking to you, you're my exact same age. We have so much in common. And then to like hear your story and kind of just see the journey that you've been on, I was like, okay, it's going to be okay. Like, I'm going to figure it out one day. Right. So
Yeah.
thank you for sitting down with us. It's so super exciting to finally have a community member on our podcast. So
Yeah, thanks for letting me be on here. I'm really excited. I loved our time that we got a couple weeks ago. So
yes,
It's a good venting time.
yes, yes. Okay, so you were telling us when we met that you actually in your counseling program didn't receive any training around women's health or chronic illness, that kind of stuff. And we actually, right after we talked to you, we sat down with another community member who is also a licensed counselor, and she was licensed in another country and then moved here and got relicensed here whenever she moved to America. And she has the same story as you. And so it's not just your program. And so I would love for you to share that with the community who's listening, because I think it's important for people to recognize the lapse in care that women's health issues gets.
yeah, absolutely. I went to a university that is one of the top 10 counseling programs in the United States. And so I was fully expecting, to get the best education from this college. We learned about literally everything from, the minute conception happens and development, brain development, emotional, mental, everything. But what I started kind of wondering about was like, we're talking about all these like minority groups of like what they face, which is absolutely needed. And it was eye-opening for sure. Like I learned, the just so many struggles that people go through being in a minority. And I didn't realize that chronic illness was going to be one of those that was like overlooked. And so it's a 3-year program. We didn't have a single mention of people dealing with chronic pain, much less like, we didn't even have a trauma course when I was in the program. And so that was something that I think they've developed now that they offer like once a month, but the program really doesn't talk about women's issues, especially health related. Like pregnancy, the older you get, like people start having babies, and just we hear about postpartum depression, but you don't really hear about all the different mental health issues that come up before or with infertility, which, a lot of our community members like are going through or facing. And it really wasn't a topic of conversation in like any of my classes, beyond, postpartum depression and anxiety. So that's why I think a lot of people in our community with endometriosis find it really hard to find a counselor that really understands the complexity of having a chronic illness and chronic pain. So any chronic illness or any chronic pain, this is something I've come to kind of believe in my own experience and in what I've gathered from other people with chronic pain issues. It's traumatic, and it's traumatic for us because having a disease like we have is like being in a traumatic situation like that you cannot escape. And so the way I explain it to people is it's like being in a prison that other people can escape. Like other people can escape their traumas. They can either, deny it, they can hide from it, they can literally physically flee. But for those of us with endo, our trauma source is our body, and we can't escape it. And so when you live with that trauma every single day of your life, like that's what complex PTSD is it's an ongoing exposure to a source of trauma. And like, that's something I don't think the counseling world has fully grasped.
Right.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that you say that because like I think like with myself personally, I think each day is like a different mental obstacle course that I have to deal with. Like there's certain days, and I don't know, like I haven't thought of a trigger point for it or anything like that, but some days like I'll look at my scars and it bothers me a lot more than other days. Like other days I'm like, oh, scars, whatever, don't really acknowledge them. And then there's those days where I'm like, wow, like my body went through so much. Even though these are tiny, I was like, it was, such a big game changer in my life. And just things like that. Like every day there's something that our body does or makes us feel. And you're right, it is like this complicated, like never ending kind of thing. And it's like my scars aren't going to go away. So what do I do then?
Right. But I mean, what about like the scars that aren't visible, right? Like for you, you have a different perspective per se, because you do have that counseling background, but say somebody who has had nothing but like trauma up to this point and no kind of counseling or training to be able to process those emotions, and they've had to drop out after trying to finish a program twice, and they've invested a lot of time and money and attention to wanting to complete this degree. Like, where does that leave them? That's grief. That is very profound grief. And to know that people aren't being trained to help people through that is absolutely mind-boggling to me. I just looked up while we were talking, because you were saying like there's no training within women's health. There are 44 miscarriages every minute. So like while we've just had this conversation, there have been more than 88 miscarriages. And to just kind of like put that into perspective, that's 88 people that need counseling like tomorrow. And to not have enough counselors trained in that is just crazy to me. Like that's just one portion of women's health, right? Yeah.
There, I would say that that's kind of a specialty that is up and like growing more. We didn't learn about it outside of like, and that would include grief counseling. But there are a lot more women who are specializing in infertility. But I think you made a really great point, Liz. Like, what about all the scars that you can't see? Like, endometriosis causes, like, not only is it physical trauma of like your body going through the most extreme pain, like I could just go on about how our brains literally become like almost like back to our animal like instincts of like just surviving. But then I truly believe that this disease is psychologically traumatic, not only because of what we encounter like from the medical field, but simply from never being able to trust that your body can do what it is expected or thought to be able to do. And then add on the emotional. And then if you're a spiritual person, the spiritual trauma of trying to reconcile what your faith is with what you're seeing in your life. I mean, this disease, and I mean, many chronic illnesses and like, this is the most I think any human being can bear. Like, I don't say that lightly. Like, I've looked through so many things, and I'm not trying to say like endo has the worst pain ever, but like the complexity is what I'm trying to communicate to people is like when you go to just, you know, a Joe Schmo counselor, they're not going to know like what to do with you. And I'm speaking from experience. Like I tried to find like a good counselor for years. And they either want to fit me in the box of like, you have anxiety or you have trauma or you have, you know, whatever. And it's like, no, it's this full body experience of experiencing trauma and pain in every single aspect of your life. And that's why I think there needs to be so much more education in the counseling world of how to not be overwhelmed as a counselor when you encounter someone like this, but also, you know, there is ways to help the brain cope with pain. I could totally nerd out on all the neuroscience, and maybe we'll get there a little bit later when we start talking about the vagus nerve. But I mean, it is a huge need, and especially to not belittle those in this community of the trauma. And I don't use that word lightly, of the trauma that we're experiencing on a daily basis.
I'm interested in like if someone asks you like what is trauma, what would you, I guess, what would your definition be?
Yeah, that's a great question. My definition of trauma is anything that you experience that goes beyond your capacity to process it.
Okay.
So like as a child, go ahead.
Oh no, it's because like I think back, so I had my first like laparoscopy surgery where I was diagnosed, but it was ablation. A month later, my pain was worse than it was before. So I found an excision specialist, and within 5 months of my first surgery, I was having my second one.
Wow.
That first time, like I think back, I'm like, it went smooth, like I wasn't in much pain right afterwards. It was like very easy. So I think I had set myself up to think that my second surgery was going to be the exact same. And I think I could say it was like the complete opposite. Like the pain was horrible. Like my anxiety was so bad afterwards. Like just all the bad, like associated with it. And I think I want to say it was like 3-4 months afterwards. I was pulling into a parking garage that was awfully similar to the hospital parking garage of my second surgery. And I found myself just freaking out. And I was like, what just happened? Like, it's a parking garage. Why is this something that's bothering me as much as it is? And so when I started doing counseling, like she brought up PTSD. And for me, I was like, this was just like surgery though. Like PTSD for me is like something like a car accident or, you know, someone dying in your arm, something like that. You know, I never thought that you could get PTSD from a surgery.
Yeah.
So, like, I never associate, I think, I mean, I still don't. Like, I feel bad associating the word trauma with my endo. So I find it so interesting that, like, you know, I think you're saying, like, there's all the trauma with endo.
Yeah. Yeah. All, every kind. So one thing I like to kind of share with people is we have a pain scale, right? Let's say it's 1 to 10. Maybe some of us might feel some triggering of like just that question of on a scale of 1 to 10, what's your pain at? You know, it's so subjective. But what is powerful about that scale is the worst pain you have ever felt in your life specifically is your 10. So when someone says, this is my 10, it may, you know, in the world's eyes be like, oh, yours is really just a 1 compared to their 10, but your brain doesn't know the difference. In your brain, your 10 is 10. And so it doesn't matter what other people's scales are because you're not using their scale. So the brain only knows what you've experienced. And so does that make sense? Like kind of validating, like the worst thing you've ever gone through is the worst thing that your brain can comprehend.
It's funny you say that because I feel like now I started unvalidating myself.
Mm,
I get asked that question, I'm like, my 1 to 10 or your 1 to 10?
wow, yeah.
And now I'm like, why? Like, I shouldn't have to do that. But because of everything that we go through with like in the medical field,
Hmm.
we've started having to learn that we have to like accommodate ourselves
Mhm.
to everyone else.
Yeah. Liz, do you feel similar?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I have a background in outpatient physical therapy. I managed clinics for years, and I think there's a diagnosis that not many people know of, and it's CRPS, where the pain is literally being generated from the brain. Like there is no specific point within the body that physicians can find that there is like pain coming from, but people feel like this immense amount of pain. And that's why I always encourage people will say like, oh, well, my family doesn't believe that my pain is real. Like, regardless of if you can put your finger on a spot that is painful, pain is real in your body and it should be believed. And it doesn't matter if you have a high pain tolerance or a low pain tolerance. I've been asked that by physicians before, like, do you have a high pain tolerance? And I'm like, well, what does it matter? Like, pain to me is pain. So you need to treat
Yeah.
pain as such. Like, if I'm in excruciating pain, but that's a 2 for somebody else, who cares? Like, it's my pain. Just do what you need to do about it. So
That is so true. Yeah, who cares about anyone else's scale? Like nobody asks a little kid who like broke their arm, like, do you have a high pain tolerance? Like we're all humans. It doesn't matter our age, if we're 2 or 80, like we're telling you it hurts, we should be taken seriously. Like I know there's so many nuances that people try to bring in that of like, oh, you're just drug seeking, or it's like, well, there's obviously something going on. If even if we are drug seeking, like we need help. Like
Yeah.
we need help. So,
yeah.
it's hard in broken systems, but that's why I wanted to come on here is to like, we want to advocate for anyone going through the severity of pain that we've gone through. And with the endometriosis diagnosis, like this is our way of spreading, you know, just the awareness that we need and we deserve to be served and cared for in the counseling field, the medical field, and in much greater ways.
So you said something a minute ago that I want to address. You said endo isn't, I think you said something to the effect of like endo isn't the most painful thing or some, I don't remember exactly what you said, but I want to like validate for people. Endo has been compared to as painful as a heart attack. And again, like pain is subjective to each person, but when you sit back and you think about that, like people are rushing to the ER when they're having chest pain of that magnitude. And that's something that we live with every day. I remember as a young kid, I would like be withering on the floor in like a fetal position in so much pain. And I remember my mom standing over me saying like, if you ever intend to have kids one day, back then I wanted like 4 or 5 kids, right? She was like, if you ever intend to have kids one day, you're never going to be able to give birth because you can't tolerate pain. And she thought my pain level was so low. And I will never forget how often she told me that because I was like literally in the worst pain imaginable. And taking hydrocodone as a 16, 17-year-old, like that was prescribed to me from a physician. And it still didn't touch my pain. Or I would take 1,000 milligrams every 4 hours. Like, no wonder my body feels the way that it does now. Like, I've been choking it full of meds trying to survive. And I just feel so bad for people that have to constantly validate their pain for others.
Yeah. I mean, I just think about like even just last year, I think there's been a handful of occasions where I'll send Liz a message or she's messaged me like, hey, I'm feeling really bad pain right now. Like, do you think I should go to the ER? Kind of situations. And it's like we don't do it because it's like, is it worth it? But or I guess that is exactly why. Like, is it worth it? Like, are we gonna get the attention that we feel like that we need? Or are we just gonna get blown off? Like, what is there a point in going or not?
Talk about PTSD.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, why do we live in a world where that's the case? And, I don't think, I was like, because I thought I was the only one. And then, I met Liz and I started meeting all these other people. And it's like, it's a problem. And the thing is, like, no one's really talking about it. I don't text my cousin, like, hey, do you think I should go to the ER? Because I know she doesn't understand it
Mhm.
the way Liz understands it. And, unfortunately, there's people who don't have that support anywhere, or like they just haven't, met someone in our community that they are able to do that with.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Liz, I'm glad you highlighted that. That was not my intention. I think it's a coping skill I've developed
Oh,
of when
100%.
I
We
try
all
to
do.
tell people, like, I'm not saying endo is the worst pain. It's because I'm so tired of trying to argue and convince them
Yes.
that our pain is severe. And so I'm really glad you highlighted that. And Yari, my sister's an ER nurse, and it's actually terrifying because I text her and sometimes I call her and I'm like, I literally cannot do, like, I'm sure you guys have all been in that place of pain where you literally can feel your so it's like your executive functioning like goes out the window and you're kind of just like, I tell people I probably look possessed because I'm just rocking back and forth.
Yep.
You're like mumbling, you're incoherent. And those are the times where I like muster up the strength to call my sister and I'm like, should I go to the ER? And I can tell you one of the darkest moments of my life was when my sister cried and she was like, they won't help you. Like, you want to talk about feeling hopeless? How do you feel when you're in the worst pain of your life? And even an ER nurse admits, like, there's nothing they can do for you. Like, that is one of the most terrifying feelings. Now, I'm not saying if you're in extreme pain, don't go to the ER because there are many times where it can be life-saving if you have a cyst or you have, something else going on.
Yeah.
But Yari, like you were saying, like, what kind of a world do we live in when you're in the most extreme pain of your life, they just straight up confess, like, there's nothing we can do for you? Like, that's the reality of living with endo. It's being told that over and over again, even by people like my sister loves me. Like, she's one of my best friends, and yet she knew the reality of they're not going to give you anything that, you already have the high pain prescription meds. Like, they're just going to look at you and say, like, go home and wait it out. And so that's one of the darknesses of this disease is having to argue and convince people of the severity of our pain when other people who are going through this level of pain, all they have to say is, I have chest pain, and it's instant care, instant, remediating whatever pain they can. Um, so yeah, it is there's an article, right? I think you guys posted it. Like, endo is one of the top 20 most painful things that
Mhm.
you can have. So
And
yeah, I want to validate this is the most painful thing I think a human person can experience physically, mentally, emotionally. Like, it's so complex, but
not to consider the fact that like it starts bleeding into everything else.
mhm.
Earlier this year, or it was like the week between Christmas and New Year's. Um, I am pretty sure we had like a meeting, and I was like, yeah, I'm not feeling well, but I think we're so accustomed to like, push through it, like whatever,
Yes.
you'll get through it. And I did that a little too much that I ended up in the hospital with pneumonia.
Oh my gosh.
And it was because I had waited so long, like it was septic at that point. And so I was in the hospital for a good while, and then recovery was brutal as well. But
Mm.
it was because of that mentality I have set myself to like just push through it. Like, what is a doctor gonna do? And it's scary because it's like, what if it was like someone else in a more like serious situation where like their appendix ruptured, but they're like, oh, maybe this is just new endo pain. And then, like things like that, it's so scary to think about.
And that's why it's traumatic, because we have no idea what's happening in us. Like other people who are, quote unquote healthy, when they have a strong pain, they know something is going on, like it's an emergency. But for us, I mean, we don't know until they literally cut us open and they're like, okay, you do have endo. Or yeah, I think that's the complex trauma of this disease is you feel it. I mean, I've had 7 kidney stones, and I just like, I'm like, oh, it's probably just another kidney stone, but then it was like an endo lesion. And so I, got all the scans and they're like, you don't have any stones. And I was like, I guess it's endo. And like, thankfully that was before my surgery. So they got it out, the endo. But that's such a good point, Yari. Like, we never know when to take our own self seriously, but we're fighting so hard for everyone else to take us seriously. And
Yeah.
it's so hard.
And it's one of those like mental obstacle courses, like, is it not? Do I do something? Do I not? Like, and it's mentally like it's frustrating, it's exhausting, like just having to decide what to do or think single
Yeah,
day.
it's so
Like, I
exhausting.
just want to do what I like, go to the grocery store without thinking like, okay, if I go to the grocery store, like I know when I get back home, I'm gonna have to lay down for like at least 3 hours and then maybe do something. Not,
Mhm.
most people are just like, oh, I gotta go to the grocery store and then I do this and then I do that. And it's like, I can't think that way. I have to think about like what needs to be done today. And like, that's like, and then I will not be able to do anything else after that.
Mhm. Mhm.
And, it sucks.
Like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, I always get told by a lot of people, especially my mother-in-law, which super sweet. Like we have the best relationship. So this is not like a negative thing at all, but she'll always say like, I just don't know how you do everything you do with the amount of pain that you have, or I don't know how you get up and you do X, Y, and Z and you've been in pain today. And like I currently right now am at the point where my husband has to get me like physically help get me out of bed in the mornings because I wake up in so much pain. But I have a choice. Like I can lay in bed and, we can dip more into our savings because I'm not working and we can, do whatever, get me counseling or whatever to deal with my pain. Or I can get up, I can be productive, I can look for a job, I can, do X, Y, and Z that needs to be done on my list. And I don't know, for me, like mentally, the second option is what's better for my mental health. But there's totally people who live with number one. But I think it's so hard because people on the outside look at someone like me and say, like, oh, well, she's working 2 or 3 jobs. She's, running a nonprofit. She's going to the grocery store. She's attending birthday parties. She's baking cakes. She's, whatever. But then there's this other person who lays in bed all day. And like both are validated, right? Both are things that people have to do to survive. I just think for me, my mental health is better on this way. And pain is something that I've unfortunately lived with since I was 12 or 13 years old. And I've become accustomed to it. Like there's not a day genuinely since I was 13, 14 years old that I haven't been in pain. Um, you just mentally have to choose which road is best for you, but neither are wrong. And neither make anybody lazy or less productive to society. We each hold a special place in society. It's just what is the best option for you right now? And for some days, like it's me doing 20 errands, and for others, it's laying on the couch.
Yeah. Like, I think I was very much like you, and just like more so recently, I stopped caring in a way of like needing to, or I guess I just stopped caring about my mental health because I'm like, like I need to do these things. Like, I know I feel better when I do things, but it's like my body just won't let me.
Yeah.
And it's like, even a couple weeks ago when I had like strep, I laid in bed for like 4 days straight and I felt no guilt. because I was like, I know my body needs to rest, but when it comes to like a flare, it's like, why don't I allow myself the same grace about my body needs the rest?
Yeah.
Mm.
And I think a lot of people go through that. And I know I see examples all the time of like when someone's sick, like, you know, people are like, oh, get some rest, like, you know, all those things. But when it comes to a chronic illness, like it's crickets, you know, you don't get that same, I guess, attention in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like that leads into what's on your list of like self-care and like the hope talk that we've been
Yeah.
having lately.
Yeah, for sure. So, in our previous conversation that we had offline, I was asking kind of like, is there hope for us with endo? And you know, we all kind of are on different paths and are in different places on our endo journey. Like y'all have had quite a few surgeries. I'm still out recovering from my first. Um, but we talked about how like, you know, we're all in different seasons of like, I don't feel hope anymore for finding, you know, relief from my endo pain or, um, you know, I'm still trying to figure out what does hope look like for me because I like being realistic because realistic is safe for me. Um, but one thing I was really thinking about from your video that you posted on Facebook, Liz, was like hope is terrifying when you have experienced any kind of pain in life, like especially when it's something that everyone tells you there is no hope for. And when you've seen that that is actually like right now, we're told there's no cure for this disease. And so anyone who does have hope for a cure is like kind of a unicorn. Like, okay, good for you, but like they're probably not going to have the cure for us in time, you know, to like kind of get a quote unquote normal life back. Um, but there's this quote that I saw and I don't know who said it, but it said, it's not giving up to stop hoping, it's moving forward. And I thought that was so powerful because, you know, if we tell people like, I just don't have hope for that I'm going to get better, we're immediately shamed.
Yeah.
Like nobody asks us for the context or the history of all that we've experienced. It's like, well, shame on you for being negative. And it's like, what if us just letting go of a cure for us right now is the way we move forward?
Yeah.
What do you guys think about that?
I think it's very true. I mean, you can get in such a dark place,
Mhm.
especially when you're headed into a neck surgery. And for somebody like me, and I mean, I would also throw Yadi into this, like we've had traumatic surgeries, we've had traumatic
Mhm.
outcomes. You know, Yadi had ablation. I had a physician do something against my wishes. And like, how do you find any hope in that? Like,
Mhm.
I've always told people like a bad surgery is worse than just not having one at all. Um, because you get in such a dark and negative place about, am I ever going to get better? Am I ever going to find some normalcy in life? Am I ever going to be able to do X, Y, and Z? Like, am I ever going to be able to finish my degree? Am I ever going to be able to obtain the job that I want? Like, it's hard.
Yeah, I think for me, it was like a very hard thing to choose to let go of hope because I was like, am I a failure for giving
Mm.
up hope? Like, how could I do that to myself? It's like, you know, it's my body, like I should be the one continuing to like fight to get better. But then that's like the mental exhaustion of like, should I schedule more PT appointments? Should I have another surgery? Like, should I try another medication? Like, that was just too much on me.
Yeah.
And it was something that, and like, even I still do it, but not as much, I would say. But like, it was an everyday thing. Like, do I need another surgery? Should I schedule PT twice a week? Should I try this other medication. And when I stopped putting that on myself so much, like my brain felt lighter.
Mhm.
And it's like, and it sounds so bad saying it was like because I gave up hope. My brain got lighter.
I wonder though if it's not even like giving up hope. I wonder if it's like just this radical acceptance of like, this is my body.
Yeah.
And instead of continually denying what my reality is, I'm just going to accept that this is what I have. This is the body I have. And I'm going to like stop wishing on these things that may or may not come to fruition. I think, like you said, Yari, that's mentally taxing because you can never move forward. And I think that's probably what that quote was saying was wishful thinking doesn't really get us anywhere, with this disease. It can motivate you, but it only takes you so far until you get to that point of exhaustion. And I think that's the power of this community. Like, I hope people don't hear you guys say, like, I've given up hope on life. Like, that's not what I hear from y'all. Because if y'all had given up hope for like a good life, you guys wouldn't be doing what you're doing right now. Like, you guys obviously have hope for other women, and that's why you're doing this hard work of pouring your like literal like blood, sweat, and tears. Like, you guys don't feel good, physically, and yet you still are pouring into other women and encouraging them that they're not alone. Like, you're not giving false hope or we're going to find the cure. Like, it's accepting our life sucks, a lot of the time. We're alone a lot of the time. We're misunderstood every day of our life, but you're not alone here. And like, to me, that is a message of hope. And really that's the main message of hope in a disease like this, I think.
Right after we had started the nonprofit, somebody approached me and wanted to know very point blank about why we weren't fundraising for research or cures or medications. And that is never why I started the nonprofit. I think underlying, I had always known that regardless of what research or anything finds, it's not going to help anybody today. And my biggest concern is that we all have to live with this right now. And it's very taxing on us mentally, physically, emotionally. And I want nothing more than for people who come in contact with F to feel loved and cared about and supported. And I will meet you wherever you are on your road. Because that's not something that exists for us. Like, there are so many organizations out there fundraising and lobbying, and we've seen that the government isn't going to do anything, and it's us against the world. And we're better in numbers, and we can do more in numbers for each other. And I don't ever want anyone to feel like they're off on an island alone and that nobody gets it, because we've all been there. We've all felt that way. Some of us still do. Yeah, and I don't necessarily want to give people false hope. It's just, I want to give you hope in that you're going to feel a lot less alone, and this road is going to be a lot less dark. And like, come join us. Like, I'll give you a candle and we'll walk down this tunnel together, because I don't ever want to paint it something that it's not. It's hard. It's a hard road. It's a very long, tiring, exhausting, expensive road. But I feel more hopeful in the fact that I will continue to find people who need love and support, and we will give that to them. So
Yeah, something I really like bringing up, and I do it a lot, so it's probably annoying at this point, but when like guess I got to my point in being diagnosed where I'm like, this is not going anywhere. Like, I'm not going to get better. I felt guilty for feeling alone because my parents, my partner, like my family, like are so supportive, and they have been there for every step of the way. And so I felt guilty for feeling alone because I had such an amazing support system. And through counseling, she was like, you feel alone because they don't understand. They never will because they don't have endo. And like when she put it in that way, I was like, okay, that makes me feel better, like, or less guilty that I feel alone. And when I first like met Liz and we started talking, and she would like verbatim basically say what I was feeling or what I was thinking, I was like, wow, like this is the first time in my journey that I've not felt alone.
Mm-hmm.
And like she literally understands and feels what I have been going through in a way that nobody has. And it's like if we can provide that for other people,
Yeah.
I think that that's the best that we can do.
Yeah.
Because it's, we're not going to find a cure. We're not going to be able to pay off everyone's medical debt, all those things. But if we can be there for people, then that's what we want to do.
In my counseling program, I remember telling somebody who was ahead of me in the program, I was like, I just feel so inadequate as a counselor. Like, why should they pay me $80 to like, help them? And she was like, if all you give them is unattentive, or not unattentive, what's the word?
Undivided.
Undivided attention for 1 hour. Like if you are just a listening ear, that is more powerful in this world than, anything else. And I think that's what you guys give to this community, and you encourage other people to be that, is the listening ear of like nodding and saying, me too. Like, I get it. Like, that is just so powerful. It was so powerful when I found your Instagram account, and just the fact that you would go out of your way to like send me that care package. Like, I know we talked about it before, but like with this disease, finding a purpose in your life is hard, but I think it's what's going to keep us going when hope fails us. I think having that purpose of I may not be the one to get the cure in my lifetime, but if I can help comfort those while we're going through it, like through this recovery time with my surgery, like laying in bed, recovering with a disease that you've been told has no cure, like talk about having to reprocess your entire life. Like, okay, I have weeks of me just laying here thinking to myself about what do I do now? And that's something I'm still figuring out. Like, I lost the career that I've poured years into. I wanted to be a counselor, and that's not going to fit for my lifestyle anymore. And I think it's so powerful hearing you guys talk about this group and what you guys are doing, because I see the passion that you have for it, and I see like it's giving you purpose in life. And like, I don't know, it's very profound to see you guys talk about this, because the pain of the darkest dark, and the fact that you haven't just given up and be like, okay, my life sucks, I'm not going to do anything, like I'm just going to sit here. Like, you guys have done something with, like, you've done both. Like, you've been like, okay, I'm going to carry that my life is hard, but I'm also going to go back into the fire and see who else I can help walk through this. And in this world, like, that is so incredible. And I hope you hear this, and like, you guys changed my life. You gave me hope. And I know it's funny because sometimes you feel like you don't have hope, but like you really did. And I was like, there's hope for me to have friends who understand. There's hope for me, and you've said this, like some people do recover from surgery and they do have, a more normal life, and things come and go, endo, whatever. But the fact that you guys have carried on despite your pain, to me, that's like the opposite of what the world and culture teach us. Like, the world and culture is like, hey, if your life sucks, hide, don't tell anyone about your pain. Like that makes people uncomfortable. And you guys, I just see running into the fire and being like, I'm here too. Like, I'm going to help you, even if I can't help myself. And I love that. I love, love, love that, because even if you can't, yeah, I think that last phrase says it. Like, even though if you can't save yourselves, you guys are still trying to save others, in the sense of like encourage them and like give them hope that they're not alone. So I could just like sing y'all's praises all day, but it's incredible.
I wish that people understood like how many hours I devote to the nonprofit, and not because I want to like toot my own horn or say like that I deserve praise for that, because it is a very unhealthy amount of time. But I do it because every morning when my husband's literally giving me a hand out of bed, my mind is like quite literally with the other 50 people that I know that are in our group that can't get out of bed or don't have a hand to help them out of bed or are in the same position. Like my feet literally hit the floor and I'm thinking like, oh, well, I talked to so-and-so last week and I want to follow back up with them and I want to see like how they're feeling today. Or we have multiple people going through injections with PRM right now, and my mind is always with them. Or I went to yoga this past Saturday with our community, and there was a girl working towards surgery and, not really finding a good fit for a surgeon. And my mind is there. And my mind is with another girl who, is headed in that direction, but still working through other things. And I wish people understood like my life sucks. um, but yeah, it gives me a sense of purpose that I've never cried so much on a podcast. Thank you, Sophia.
Oh, you're safe here. You're safe.
um, it gives me a sense of purpose that hopefully somebody feels less, excuse my language, shitty than I do on a daily basis, solely because they have a support system. And I have an amazing support system. I have a husband who's here all the time and does anything and everything I need. But I know that there's 20, 30, 40, 50 people that don't have that. And if we can be that, then we will do that. Recently, we were able to connect two community members together, which I want to talk about care buddies in a second, but we were able to connect two community members together. She was coming up here to the Dallas-Fort Worth area from another area in Texas to have surgery, and she literally had nobody to take her to and from the surgery center. And we were able to connect her with another community member who I think she Ubered to the surgery center, but then the community member met her there and took her back to her hotel room and kind of got her comfortable after surgery. And like, that is what community is all about.
Yes.
Especially in like this tough disease that we go through, and like how much time and effort and money it takes. And you don't always have the money to hire somebody to come and help you. And that's what we've created. Like, I can't physically be there, but you're always in my brain. But I will find somebody who can be there and hold your hand and do the things, if that's not one of us. So yeah.
That's incredible. I love that story.
And I do think like I don't tell Liz enough. I try to. Like she is 100% the backbone of this foundation. Like we literally would not be here if it was not for her and her deciding to create this nonprofit. And it's like she changed my life. Like I was in the deepest part of the trenches when I found the foundation. Now I'm gonna cry. I was like in the deepest part, of the trenches when I found the foundation. I'm like, there's nothing for me to do anymore. Like, what am I doing with my life? What can I even do now with this disease? And part of me struggled with wanting to be part of this foundation because I'm like, am I doing this for a selfish reason to like try to find a purpose? Like, I don't think that's fair to the people that I might connect with. But then I'm like, no, this is a good purpose. Like this is a needed purpose. And like with Liz, like she's done so much, like she's been a professor, she's been in healthcare, she's done so much with her disease. And it's like, if she can do it, I think I can do it. And like I'm always, like reaching out to her. I'm like, she's like a big sister to me at this point.
Mm.
And it's like, you know, she's great. I just love Liz. That's all.
I
Anything you
think
take
it,
from Liz is great.
but it goes to show you guys, like, our culture in America pounds us that to be successful, you have to have a six-figure job, you have to be the CEO of your own company, like pushing yourself hard, hard, hard. And then we get that, path derailed by a diagnosis that debilitates us. And every day is different, whatever. But then when you hear like what Liz has done and just like being the recipient of what Liz does for us, like, to me, I'm like, what greater purpose could you have in life? And what greater proof to our world to show that we, as people with a chronic illness, have just as much worth and value to our community, and we can offer so much more than bringing money or, advancing whatever cause we think is the best one. Like, you encouraging other women that they are not alone. I don't think there's a better, more purposeful thing that you can do in life other than raising people up and giving them the comfort that they need in the darkest places of their life. So I just to like remind, just as a reminder to myself and to all of us, like, our value as people, now I'm gonna cry. Goodness gracious, what's happening? Like, I've struggled with my value. Like,
Yeah.
what can I offer to this world? And like, just talking about what you guys have done, if we can just encourage one person, take one person to get their surgery, like, you can know that you have impacted a life, and we will never know how they go on to impact other people because of that small act of kindness. And so
It's true.
just reminding us, like, even though we can't do what so many other people can, we still have value. We still have a point to living. We can still bring incredible things into this world, even if it's something as, quote unquote, small as kindness and a care package. Like, that can really change so much in our world. And so
It's true.
I love that story of that. Were they like care buddies that they like, is that what you like? They were care buddies and she took her to the hospital, or just randomly connected?
No, it was posted in one of the, I don't even remember which group, one of the endometriosis groups. And she was like, hey, my kids really need to go to school. Dad needs to stay home and take them to school. I really
Mm.
need to have the surgery. And she was like, have you ever hired anybody to take you like to and from the surgery center? And I was like, hey, reach out to me. Like, we have a really awesome community. I will see if we can find somebody to help you. And we have a really, really sweet community member who has volunteered with us before. And she was like, I'll do it. And I was like, really? And she's like, yep, I'm here. Like, if I'm off work, like, I will do it. Can you connect me with her? And
Wow.
yeah, she was able to help. But that's why we encourage people so much. I know care buddies and like attending community events is so intimidating. I have the worst social anxiety, and even me as like hosting the event, I have a hard time like showing up, but I always know that every time I show up, I'm going to connect with people and be able to like hear people's stories and people feel like it's a safe space. But I also like seeing the community members come together and like hug on each other and love on each other.
Mm.
And um, I'll let you kind of like speak to why community is important, but I we're working so hard to like build our community in Austin right now, and it's just like we're hitting roadblock after roadblock. And I think a lot of it is just like social anxiety for people. Like, why do you feel like it's so, as a community member, like why do you feel like it's so important for people to show up to events and sign up for care buddies and do all the things?
Yeah. I guess the short answer would be we are hardwired as humans to need community.
Yeah.
Like, the American way of doing life with independence, like, you get married, partner up with someone, you live by yourselves, you move away from your family. Like, Oh, I come, all three of us come from a Hispanic culture. And like, if we do that, that is like weird. Like, you need your people. And, growing up, I was always like, oh my gosh, y'all are crazy. Like, let me go spread my wings. But as I get older, I'm like, they were on to something. Like, having people that you can bounce things off of and say, like, am I being irrational in this? Or am I, especially as people who are hard on ourselves, like undermining our own pain or questioning ourselves, it's so important to have people who you can process things with. Maybe you're an internal processor, but you're still going to gather insights from people, whether or not they know that what you're thinking. So, yeah, I think it's, there's a lot of counselors out there who kind of focus on like, you got to be in community and you need friends. And I think it makes sense, honestly. I have social anxiety. I think it's because we've been hurt. And the first time I was 7, I got really sick, and that's where I got the IBS diagnosis. But the doctor came in and told my dad I was making it all up for attention. 7 years old, I was in the room. The reason we get anxiety is because we've had enough times where people tell us, they're not trustworthy.
Yeah.
People are unsafe. And so it's huge detriment to us as, people who need a safe community. And so that's why I think F is such a huge asset to us, because it is a safe place where we don't have to convince other people of what we're going through. And so, yeah, I think it's just hardwired into us to need, it's kind of like that herd mentality of like, if I'm by myself, my body's like, literally, like there's actually science that shows if you're isolated, your body is more tense and more ready to like be, what's the word, kind of survival. Like, okay, I got to fight. I've got to be on edge. But when you're in a safe place, your body literally relaxes. And it's like, I'm surrounded by people who can help me and support me when I need it. So when we isolate, it's usually out of a place of fear and self-protection. But yeah, that was not the short answer I initially had. But
I think that's a good answer. In yoga on Saturday, I felt so intimidated because I can't move my body the way that I need to, and I have pain, and it was in a public park, right? Like, oh, so much anxiety. But Dr. Ali had us like lay back on the ground and just close our eyes and just like be in the moment. And we laid there for minutes. It felt forever. I don't even know how long it was. And the whole thing that kept going through my head the whole time was like, I could never have done this a year ago. I just feel like I'm in such a safe space with people who are like me, with Endo, and you just feel comforted, like we're together and no one's ever going to look at you and judge you or say like, oh, you can't do this move, or why are you sitting down on the mat because you can't do a certain thing, or even like closing my eyes and just trusting that I'm in a safe space with those people. Like, it's big. And for a lot of people there, well, let me think back. Yeah, I had never met anybody in person officially before Saturday. So, that's to say, like, we've built such a good community online that I know them so well that it's like, it's okay. Like, we're good.
yeah.
Oh, I had met one person several times prior, but that was it. So, yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah,
Oh, go ahead, Yadi.
no, I was just gonna say, like how Sophia mentioned, like, when we're in that safe space, like we feel relaxed. And like I just thought about like the first Austin meetup we did was like a little Valentine's event.
Yeah.
And like right off the bat, like it was like, I think I should have apologized to those around us. I was like, there's like a lot of TMI things said. Not like TMI to us, but like
Yeah.
I said, TMI to those around us.
Yeah.
But it's like, I've never met these people. Like or like in person at least, I think I had a meeting with like 2 of them before. And then, but it's like, we feel safe having these specific like conversations for a reason. And it's because we know like we all are in the same boat. I think it's been such a long time since we like brought up this analogy. I don't know if you remember, Liz. It's like we're in the same boat, but it's like sometimes I will paddle for you, and then sometimes I'm gonna need you to paddle for me.
Right.
So it was like one of those kind of things, but it's a safe boat.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's worth bringing up too that you're one of the youngest people in our group, Yadi. There's a 10-year age difference, I think, between us, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't ever recognize the age difference when we're around people.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like we're 10, 20 years apart. I don't know. There's just something about the endo community. Like I never notice age. Yadi and I talk almost on a daily basis, and never would I ever consider that there's such a big age gap between us.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's with anyone. I mean, like even like with Sophia, like when she was said, I think you were 30, 34.
34.
Yeah.
I'm like, are you sure? I was like, because I was like, either y'all are a lot younger than y'all make yourselves, or I'm a lot older than I make myself. But I was like, it's never like an uncomfortable kind of thing. Because, like I said, same boat.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, tell us all about the vagus nerve.
Oh my gosh, y'all. Yes. Okay. So the beauty of the brain is like you could never finish talking about the beauty of the brain. And I think this is my personal opinion. I think the missing piece to endo treatment, like, we have surgery, we have the PRM injections or whatever. Like, I say whatever because I just finished a round of them and they hurt like hell. So I have a very difficult relationship with them. Um, and then you have, the suppositories or whatever treatments people have tried to give us. Some are good for others, some are not. But what I have not heard, and maybe this is where counseling needs to step up and acknowledge that their role in helping people with chronic illnesses. I think the brain and its relationship to pain is the missing piece. So since our last conversation 2 weeks ago, I've like really kind of I love to research about the brain and stuff. And so have y'all ever heard of the neuroplasticity of the brain?
Mm-mm.
It sounds familiar, but I couldn't tell you anything
So
about
it's a fancy word of saying the brain can change. Like think of, like a tree root. If you pulled up a tree, you'd see all of the roots, right? So from beginning of any experience, our brain starts creating these neuron pathways. And the more that you think that same thought or do that, like, let's say the more you practice piano, the stronger that root is going to grow. And it can act, and then if you stop playing piano, it will actually shrink. Like that root would kind of shrink and stop growing because you're sending your energy and thoughts to a new thing. Like now I play guitar. So the piano may shrink in your brain, the skills, while the guitar skills grow. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it's actually the same thing with pain. So the brain determines the severity of the pain we feel, but I want to preface that all pain is real.
Sure.
So like Liz mentioned, there's I don't know, is it a illness or like a condition where there's no source of pain, but the brain still is like signaling it.
Yep.
So I love that you said that because I was like, oh my gosh, that's what I want to talk about. Like that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
So with endo, instead of learning a piano skill, our body is learning to feel pain. So this is why I think, remember, I'm not a scientist, but what I've read, this is why I think after endo surgery, your body still feels pain, even where it's supposedly healed. And I think it's because your neurons, the pathways have been so ingrained that this is where I feel pain. So like with my kidney stones, I still feel like twinges every now and then. And I'm like, oh, I have another one. Oh my gosh. And I freak out, go get a scan. And they're like, your kidneys are literally perfect. There's no stone. And I'm like, no, I'm having every single symptom. And they're like, it's in your head. And I'm like, well, duh, it's in my head. Everything goes through our head. Like, hello. But so the thing with counselors and the brain is that they need to understand, this is one thing I encourage people looking for a counselor, is they need to understand how to change our relationship to pain. So instead of tensing up and us going into that panic mode, we need to learn how to hone that back and then like channel that energy into a different way. And so one thing that you can do is, I'll give you a couple ones that I really like, but it's called Vagus, VAGUS nerve exercises. So your vagus nerve, yeah, you already knows one.
This one.
So your vagus nerve is like the biggest nerve, I think, down your spine, and it's like where all your nerves are connected. And so when we are constantly in pain, it's like kind of like, what's the word? It's overstimulated.
Yeah.
And it becomes in this constant state of like, we're always in pain. So our body's always tense. And so what we want to do is we want to calm that and kind of reset it. And so, Yari, you want to tell the one that you just were doing?
Oh,
Explain what you were doing to the listeners. Yeah.
You grab your earlobes, I guess, and just like move them in circles.
Yeah. So the one that I do is you stick your finger in your ear. You know that little front part? I don't know what you want to call it. The little part sticking out closer to your cheek. You want to move that. And so you're going to go, if you stick your fingers in your ears, you're going to gently, don't do it too aggressive, go clockwise 5 times, just enough to move that skin around. And then you're going to do the opposite direction another 5 times. And sometimes this one works, like you have to find which one works for you. But when you know you've got it when you feel a release. So some people laugh, some people cry, some people like just feel like this all of a sudden like rush of like, oh, I feel like I can relax all of a sudden. The other one is if you cup your fingers, this is going to be hard to explain for our listeners, but I guess if you're like going to cup some, how would you explain that?
Interlock your fingers?
Interlock your fingers. There you go. And then cup them behind your head. Okay. So that your head is like sitting right in that pocket. And then you're going to move your eyes to look, your press is going to stay forward, but you're going to move your eyes to look all the way as far as they can to the right. And you're going to hold it and you're going to take a couple deep breaths. It's going to feel like it is uncomfortable. Some people say they don't like it, but you're just going to do it for about 10 to 20 seconds. Yeah.
It's not one of those.
Yeah.
Eyes.
Okay. And then you would do it on the other side for about 20 to 30 seconds. So, Yari, explain what you just experienced because you looked like it was uncomfortable, which is actually normal.
Yeah. I just felt like I was like overstraining my eyes, kind of like when you put on like someone else's glasses or something.
Yeah. So what's interesting is like it's exactly for that reason that you want to keep doing it because it somehow resets that nervous system. So those are just 2. Liz, did you feel anything?
I don't know. I'm super tense today because my pain's bad, but no, I don't think so.
Okay. So I didn't like doing them, but I started doing them every single day. And I did over time realize, like, see a difference. There's just Google it. There's tons of different ones and like finding which one works for you. But I do remember one day I suddenly just started laughing and I was like, rationally, I was like, what the heck is happening? And then I like talked to my counselor and she was like, oh yeah, it's because you reset it. Like you had this little like release moment. And I was like, that was so weird. I felt like such a weirdo in my bedroom, just laughing for no reason. But resetting that kind of gives us just a break from the constant tension that our brain is really in.
Did I hear that you can reset that by like walking or swimming?
I'm not sure the relation to the vagus nerve, but I do know that walking is something that like also helps like decrease that nervous tension.
Yeah.
So I believe it.
What's fun or like interesting, I'm hearing from you. I'm hearing this from you with like the counseling background, but I first heard of this from my pelvic floor therapist.
Makes sense.
So I'm like, I always praise her. I absolutely love her. And because I like was bringing, so before when I was with someone like a different PT, I had brought up like phantom pain.
Mm-hmm.
And no, like I still love her. Like she was great, but I don't feel like she paid much attention to working on that aspect of like it possibly being phantom pain. For all I know, it might be scar tissue adhesions, who knows? But when I brought this up again with the PT I'm with now, she was like, like she got me a whole printout of like vagus nerve exercises, whatnot. And she was like, it might be like also like you gotta remember like all your nerves are still programmed to be in pain 24/7. So it's like we got to work on a way to like get them to realize like maybe you're not in this much pain.
Yeah.
Or like maybe you're
Yeah.
not in pain all the time. Um, not to say like again, it's that all in your head kind of I was like, it is all in your head, literally, but not like in a bad way.
Yeah, you're not making it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the beauty of this is like, while we're not going to erase all of our pain, I really do believe that, and there's like clinical research shows like you can decrease your pain sensitivity by doing like mental, like basically rewiring your brain. And so like that's something that I'm like really focusing in on right now because like, okay, I've had the surgery, I've done the injections, honestly like given me more pain, but I'm still, not even 3 months out from surgery. But I want to start seeing like, okay, if science proves that we can rewire our brain and kind of like desensitize the pain that we feel, I'm so curious. Like I've seen how much your brain can change. And so that's kind of what I encourage, everyone to give it a try and find a good counselor. If I can just plug that real quick, how to, look for people who say they have experience working with people with chronic illness or chronic pain. My counselor actually has a chronic pain issue in her life, so she really understands it a lot better than the 5 other counselors I've tried in the past. One thing that I also want to let people know is you are the boss in the counseling relationship. Like before you go in for a first intake session, ask for a 15-minute call and say, can we just talk and see if we're a good fit? And know that you reserve the right in your first session with a counselor, you can say this isn't a good fit for me and go find someone else. It is so worth it to not waste your time with someone who you don't feel comfortable with, who you feel doesn't understand you. Yes, it takes time to build a therapeutic relationship, but you are the one paying the money for somebody to help you. And so just like we go to doctors and if we don't like them, we never go back. Like you don't owe the counselor anything in the relationship. So if you don't click with them, like don't waste your time. Because there are people that just, I'm going to say it, just like there's bad doctors, there's bad counselors, but there's also good doctors and good counselors.
Sure.
So that's my little, find someone who understands the brain body connection and who sees you as a whole person, physical, mental, emotional. That's my little quip on finding a good counselor is you have the right to say it's not a good fit for you and use your time better with someone else. So.
Well, and just like we talk about how you need to interview your excision specialist and their background and education and continuing education is really important. It's the same for a counselor or any provider you're going to see. Don't hesitate to ask them, what kind of training do you have? Do you have, now that our listeners are hearing that, chronic pain and women's health isn't something that's taught within the normal program, what additional training do you have? Have you been trained on trauma? Have you been trained in women's health? Have you been, ask them those questions. If they feel uncomfortable answering those, then they're not the counselor or the doctor for you.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of want to get, I guess, both of your opinions because my counselor, I want to say she's not like a chronic illness, quote unquote,
Specialist. Yeah.
expert, specialist. Yeah. But I feel like I've received great care from her. Like I've never had an issue from day one. I felt comfortable talking with her. I've never felt like anything, like any kind of response from her has ever been like ill, or I've never taken it the wrong way or anything like that. It's been great. Um, so I guess what would you say, like, no, maybe you should still find someone who is more specialized in chronic illness, or like if it works, it works.
Yeah, I mean, I think if she's been helpful and you've seen growth, I guess this was another thing I forgot to mention. Like when you're going to therapy, like know what your goals are. Like if you want someone who's just going to sit there and like resonate with you, or like we call it reflect in counseling language, like someone who's just going to bounce back and be like, I see that you're hurting a lot, and like affirm what you're going through. Like there's a lot of counselors who are incredible and really good at that, and they'll sit there with you and they'll like process things with you. If you want someone who's going to educate you on like the brain body connection, the vagus nerve, how to like physically do things while you're processing mentally, like EMDR, like know what your goals are in counseling so that you know if a counselor's a good fit, right? So like it sounds like your counselor's filling the needs that you come to therapy for. Whereas like my needs, I didn't want someone to just sit there and I'm not saying that's what you wanted. But like I had a counselor who it felt like I was just going to coffee with an acquaintance.
Yes.
And I was like, I'm paying money. I want you to push back on what I'm saying, like teach me what's going on in my brain. Like I need someone who's gonna like be hard on me, not like mean, but you know, like push me to like challenge my narrative that I tell myself. And it took me a while. Like I loved the counselors that I didn't end up staying with, but they weren't what I needed. So I would ask, you know, I would ask yourself, like, is she fulfilling the needs that I need in a counselor? And if the answer is yes, she doesn't need to know, you know, chronic illness or anything like that. But the the kind of the thing that I've seen is that counselors get overwhelmed when you have, some do, when you have the complexity that comes with endo. And so that's kind of why I encourage people to look for someone who has a background with chronic illness work. But I think if she's a good fit for you, like stay because it's hard to find a good fit. So Liz, what would you say?
I had a counselor for many years that I got along with, and she was great. But like you, I'm not sure that it was actually the perfect fit. I think I just didn't know better. And then when I found a counselor who I've now been with for, I don't know, 12 months, 13 months, something like that, love her. Like she has changed my marriage. She's changed my relationship. She's changed my life. I mean, I owe it to her that I'm still sitting here today. But I wouldn't have known any better had I not seeked out somebody who understood chronic illness and endo. Um, I would probably still be with the same counselor and probably not progressing. And so I always encourage people, get that second and third opinion and see what exists out there. Doesn't mean you have to go with them, but again, like relating it back to the excision, like until you've gotten several opinions, you don't actually know what exists out there. And I always push that, like 3 opinions always.
That's a really good insight.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, like it's such a, everyone has like their own experiences. Like I completely understand what you're saying. And I think I'm really lucky to say like she has helped me in my relationship. Like
Sure.
I've been able to have conversations with my mom that I don't think would have ever happened
Yeah.
beforehand. And it's like she really, I'm like, oh, well, I feel like she would say this. And it's like, has she given you a reason to think she would say this? I'm like, no. And then she's like, so then maybe you should see what she actually would say. And I was like, okay, you're right, but I'm still gonna feel this way. But um, I think it is important. I mean, I just hope everyone is able to talk or get in touch with a counselor that is helpful and, they feel comfortable with, because that's all you can ever hope for
Yep.
someone in these situations.
Well, I think that's a good place to end. We've probably gone well over an hour at this point. We could probably talk about this conversation forever.
Oh, yeah.
Any last thoughts, Sophia?
I just want to thank you guys for being, such troopers. Like, you guys have really given so much to this community, creating it, giving the care packages. I'm so grateful to be a recipient of y'all's care. And yeah, I think if I could just leave, one last little thing, it's like what we talked about earlier. Like, our life still has worth and still has value, even if we don't look like the life and value that the world projects on to everyone. So yeah, finding purpose can be our way of finding hope, I think.
Yeah, I love that. Last thoughts, Yadi?
I think I'm gonna get everything Sophia has said as a ringtone. That's just me.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Sophia. It was an absolute pleasure to get to talk with you again. I have a feeling this will not be our last conversation. But yes, and to everyone out there listening, finding a counselor is really important. It is part of the multidisciplinary approach that we preach all the time. Finding a counselor, finding a pelvic floor therapist, finding a good excision specialist, all a care team put together is going to bring you the best outcomes. And don't ever discount what a counselor can bring you or bring to your life. So that's it for us today. And we hope that you tune in on our next EndoEmpower in the month of, oh my gosh, it's going to be June. See y'all later.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.